Today, a single one of his paintings can sell for over $100 million. His face, his sunflowers, his swirling starry sky, are printed on more posters, mugs, and phone cases than almost any image ever created by human hands. And yet, for nearly the entire span of his working life, he could barely give his paintings away. This is the story of Vincent van Gogh, the most famous painter in the world, who spent his actual lifetime believing he was a failure. Vincent Willem van Gogh was born on the 30th of March 1853 in the small village of Groot-Zundert, in the North Brabant region of the Netherlands, close to the Belgian border. His father, Theodorus, was a pastor in the Dutch Reformed Church. His mother, Anna Cornelia Carbentus, came from a family of booksellers and bookbinders. And there is one detail about his birth that historians return to again and again. Exactly 1 year earlier, on the 30th of March 1852, his parents had a stillborn son, who they had already named Vincent Willem. The boy who lived carried the exact same name, and the exact same birthday, as the brother who never breathed. 4 years later, in 1857, Vincent's younger brother Theo was born. Of all the relationships in Vincent's short, difficult life, this is the one that mattered most, the one that would, quite literally, keep him alive. Vincent's working life did not begin with a paintbrush. At 16, through a family connection, he joined the art dealership Koepel & C, working first at their branch in The Hague, then transferring to London, and later Paris. He was, by most accounts, a poor employee, increasingly withdrawn and intensely religious, and the firm dismissed him in 1876. What followed was a period of drifting that would try almost anyone's patience. He took a teaching position in England, working without pay in exchange for room and board. He worked briefly in a bookshop in Dordrecht, translating passages of the Bible into English, French, and German in his spare time, seemingly for his own satisfaction alone. He attempted to study theology in Amsterdam, under the tutoring of his uncle, and abandoned it after little more than a year, frustrated by Latin and Greek grammar he considered pointless. He enrolled in a short evangelist training course near Brussels, and again fell short of the formal qualification. And then, around 1878, he did something almost nobody with his background would consider. He took an unofficial post as a lay preacher among the coal miners of the Borinage, one of the bleakest, most dangerous mining regions in Belgium. He did not simply preach to the miners. He gave away nearly everything he owned, moved out of his rented room and into a miner's own hut, wore ragged clothes, and shared their poverty as literally as he could manage, at one point nursing victims of a mining explosion with his own hands. It disturbed the church authorities so deeply, who expected a preacher to maintain some dignity and distance from his congregation, that they declined to renew his position. Vincent van Gogh, at 25 years old, had now failed as an art dealer, failed as a teacher, and failed, in the eyes of the church, as a man of God. It was out of that specific failure that the artist emerged. Around 1880, at 27 years old, an age by which most successful painters of his era already had a decade of training behind them, Vincent decided to teach himself to draw. He was almost entirely self-taught, studying anatomy and perspective from books, taking occasional guidance from the painter Anton Mauve, a relative by marriage. His early years as an artist were spent largely in the Dutch provinces, particularly the town of Nuenen, where his father held a parish. The work from this period was dark, heavy, and earth-toned, culminating in 1885 in The Potato Eaters, a deliberately coarse portrait of a peasant family sharing a meal by lamplight, a painting Vincent considered one of his first serious artistic statements. In 1886, Vincent moved to Paris to live with Theo, who by then was a successful art dealer in his own right, managing a gallery and championing emerging artists most of the establishment dismissed. It changed everything. In Paris he encountered Impressionism, the swirling dots of Neo-Impressionism, and the flat, bold color of Japanese woodblock prints he had begun collecting, and he crossed paths with a circle of radical young painters, including Toulouse-Lautrec, Émile Bernard, Camille Pissarro, and a restless, difficult painter named Paul Gauguin. Vincent's palette, once so dark and heavy that critics compared it to mud, exploded into color within the space of about 2 years. Living again with his brother took its own toll, however. Theo found Vincent's moods and habits exhausting, and by early 1888, both men needed distance. By early 1888, the intensity of city life and the strain of living with his brother again pushed Vincent south, to the town of Arles, in Provence. It was here, chasing the light and color of the Mediterranean, that Vincent van Gogh produced the most astonishing burst of creative output in the history of Western art. He rented a small house, painted bright yellow, and dreamed of founding an artist's colony there, a studio of the South, where painters could live and work communally, supporting each other in a way the competitive Paris art world never had. In little over a year in Arles, working at a pace that alarmed even those who knew him, he painted the Sunflower series, Café Terrace at Night, The Night Café, Bedroom in Arles, and dozens of other now iconic canvases, often completing a finished painting in a single sitting under the harsh Provençal sun. He convinced Gogh to join him in the Yellow House in October 1888, hoping for the artistic brotherhood he had always craved. Instead, the two men clashed constantly over money, temperament, and the very purpose of art. On the night of the 23rd of December 1888, in the middle of a psychological crisis that historians still argue over, Vincent cut off part of his own ear with a razor and delivered it to a woman connected to a local brothel. He was hospitalized in Arles. Gogh left immediately, and the two men, despite everything they had shared, never saw each other again. In May 1889, still suffering recurring breakdowns, and increasingly afraid of what he might do to himself between them, Vincent voluntarily admitted himself to the St. Paul de Marsol Asylum in Saint Remy de Provence, a former monastery that treated a small number of patients. And here, in an institution, permitted to paint between episodes that genuinely frightened him, he entered one of the most productive periods of his entire career, completing roughly 150 paintings in about a year, working in the walled garden of the asylum, and, when his condition allowed, out in the surrounding olive groves and wheat fields. It was here, in June 1889, looking out through the barred window of his cell, that he painted the Starry Night, a swirling, half-imagined night sky over a village that existed as much in his memory of home as in the actual view before him. In May 1890, Vincent moved to the village of Auvers-sur-Oise, closer to Theo, and placed himself under the informal care of a physician, an amateur painter named Dr. Paul Gogh. In just over 2 months at Auvers, letters, and insists to an indifferent world that her brother-in-law had been a genius. In 1914, she had Theo's body moved and so much as something he made in spite of it. The fame came after he was gone. Jo van Gogh tireless work, organizing exhibitions across Europe and finally publishing the brothers' letters in full, combined with the sheer force of the paintings themselves, turned a man who died believing himself a failure into one of the most influential artists in the history of the Western world, shaping the Fauvist and Expressionist movements that followed him within a generation. By the late 20th century, his paintings were shattering auction records, irises and the portrait of Dr. Gogh each selling for tens of millions of dollars within a few years of one another. Today, The Starry Night, The Sunflowers, and his self-portraits are among the most recognized images on Earth, reproduced more often than almost any other artworks in existence, printed on everything from museum walls to coffee mugs, adored by people who have never read a single one of his 820 surviving letters. Vincent van Gogh spent 37 years believing that his life's work had failed to matter to anyone at all. He was wrong, more completely than perhaps any artist in history has ever been wrong, and he never got to find out. If this story moved you, do two quick things before you go. Hit like on this video, and subscribe to the channel, so you don't miss the next episode of the Great Live series.